Hello, hi students. I hope you all are doing well. So I welcome you all to part 2 of respiration and organisms. So last video में हमने पढ़ा था कि respiration क्या होता है. We have also learned about the two types of respiration, the one which requires oxygen for breakdown of food. So this was aerobic respiration. And there is another respiration in which oxygen is not required, that is anaerobic respiration. Apart from that, we have also learned about breathing rate. Today, we are going to learn very interesting concept, that is how do we breathe? So let's get started. So let us now learn about the mechanism of breathing. So we all know that we take in the air through our nostrils. आप लोगों को याद होगा कि हमने last session में पढ़ा था nostrils are these holes in the nose. Okay, so हम यहाँ से सांस अंदर लेते हैं. So when we inhale the air, it will pass through our nostrils into the nasal cavity. So nose के ऊपर एक space है, एक जगह है, cavity है, उसे हम nasal cavity कहते हैं. I'll show you the nasal cavity. So this area is called as nasal cavity or the nasal passage. Okay, the area that is present above your nose. So we breathe in the air from our nostrils. It passes on to the nasal cavity. From the nasal cavity, it passes on to a windpipe. And finally, it reaches the lungs. Okay, so from the nasal cavity, the air reaches our lungs, passing through the windpipe. Now, where is our lungs present? It is present in our chest cavity. It is present inside our chest. And you all know that hamara chest surrounded hai by the rib cage. Okay, it is surrounded by ribs on the side. So the rib cage is going to make sure that it is going to protect the lungs and heart from any kind of damage. Now, there is a large muscular sheet called as diaphragm that is going to form the floor of the chest cavity. Let's look at diaphragm as well. Yes. So this muscular sheet is called as diaphragm. Okay. So we are breathing in the air from our nostrils. It passes on to the nasal chamber. Then it enters the windpipe. Okay. So this is the windpipe. It is also called as trachea. Okay. This is the biological term. And then it enters into the lungs. Both our lungs are now filled with air. And these are the rib cage. These are the rib cage. It is going to protect, the rib cage is going to protect our lungs and heart from all the kind of damage. And the diaphragm is going to form the floor of our chest cavity. So breathing is going to involve the movement of both diaphragm and rib cage. So when we breathe, there is involvement of both diaphragm and rib cage. So let us understand what happens. So during inhalation, when we inhale, you all can observe that when we inhale, our rib cage is moving upward and outward. Okay, it is, our rib cage is moving upward and outward, but the diaphragm moves down. Why does it move down? It moves down to increase the cavity, to increase the chest cavity, and as a result, air will rush inside the lungs. Our lungs will be filled with more amount of air. Okay, so it is pushing down, the diaphragm is moving down to create a more space for the air to gush in inside the lungs. So the lungs get filled with air. That is happening during inhalation. Now, when we exhale, you exhale and check out what happens to your rib cage. You all can see your rib cage is moving downwards, right? So your ribs move downwards and inwards. Now, the diaphragm is going to move up. That is its actual position. And this reduces the size of the chest cavity, and the air which was present in our lungs is now moved out of the lungs. So this movement of our rib cage can easily be felt. You can inhale and exhale and you can easily feel this movement. So take a deep breath. Keep a palm on your abdomen and you can feel the movement of abdomen. What do you find? So if you keep a palm on your abdomen and feel the movement of the abdomen, you can easily feel the inhalation and exhalation. So after having learned that during breathing, there are changes in the size of the chest cavity, children got involved in the chest expansion competition. Everyone was boasting that he or she could expand it the maximum. How about doing this activity in the class with your classmates? So of course you all can do this activity in the class and you all can see who's able to expand the chest the most. Now, another important thing is smoking is going to damage the lungs. You all must have heard this, right? Smoking is very dangerous to the lungs and smoking is also linked to cancer. So this habit should strictly be avoided. It is going to affect the health of our lungs. So this is the diagram of human respiratory system. Let us quickly revise it. So we have already learned that we are going to breathe in from our nostrils. Then the air passes on to the nasal chamber. This is the nasal chamber. Then it moves on to the trachea, that is the windpipe, enters the respective lungs, and here the exchange of gases will occur. And then finally, we will exhale out carbon dioxide rich air. Now, let us quickly compare the changes that occurs in our body during inhalation and exhalation. So when we inhale, what happens to the chest cavity? The chest cavity is going to increase, okay, so that more air rushes inside our lungs. But in exhalation, the chest cavity is going to decrease. Now, let us understand how this chest cavity increases. So when we inhale, what happens to our rib cage? The rib cage is going to move upwards and outwards. Okay. But when we exhale out, what happens to our rib cage? It moves downwards and inwards. Okay, so this is the major changes occurring in our rib cage. Next is diaphragm. So what happens to the diaphragm during inhalation? The diaphragm is going to move downwards. Okay, so that there is increase in the surface area. It moves downwards. And during exhalation, what happens to diaphragm? It remains in its formal position, the normal position, and it moves upwards so that the surface area is reduced and the air moves out. So this is the basic differences that is occurring during inhalation and exhalation, the changes that occurs in a rib cage, in a diaphragm, and in a chest cavity during inhalation and exhalation. Now, let us continue. So the air around us has various types of unwanted particles, such as smoke, dust, pollen, etc. So when we inhale, the particles get trapped in the hair that is present in the nasal cavity. So we are having a hair, very fine hair in our nose as well as in the nasal cavity. So जब भी हम breathe करते हैं उसमें बहुत सारे pollutants होते हैं, smoke होते हैं, dust होते हैं, तो वो हमारे nose के hairs में trap होते हैं, as well as nasal cavity में जो hair present होते हैं वहाँ पे trap होते हैं. However, sometimes these particles may get past the hair in the nasal cavity. ऐसे बहुत सारा situations होता है जहाँ पे ये particles जो हैं वो hair को cross कर दे, nasal cavity के hairs को cross करके और आगे बढ़ जाए. Now, this may irritate the lining of the cavity, as a result of which we sneeze. आपको कभी कभी ऐसा feel होता है ना nose में थोड़ा सा irritation type का. So this is because of those particles. So what happens in such situation? हमें sneeze करने का मन करता है. We feel like sneezing. So when we sneeze, we are going to expel out. Expel out means remove out. We are going to remove these foreign particles from the inhaled air, and a dust-free, clean air enters our body. And we should take care that whenever we are sneezing, we should cover our nose so that these foreign particles is not inhaled by any other healthy person. Okay, so that's a basic hygiene that we all should follow. Let's talk about activity 6.4. So in this activity, we have to take a deep breath and we have to measure the size of the chest with the help of measuring tape and record the observation. So we have to again measure the size of the chest when it is expanded and indicate which classmate shows the maximum expansion of the chest. So you have to do this experiment along with your friends and you have to compare the results. So we can understand that mechanism of breathing by a simple model. So this model is going to be explained in activity 6.5. This is going to be really interesting. So in this model, we need to have a wide plastic bottle. हम उसका जो bottom है वो cut कर देंगे. अब we'll take a Y-shaped glass or plastic tube. सबसे पहले we'll make a hole in the lid so that the tube may pass through it. Lid मतलब वो bottle का cap में हम लोग hole बनाएंगे so that वो जो Y-shaped या तो straw ले सकते हैं या तो कोई glass tube ले सकते हैं उसके through वो pass कराएंगे. To the forked end of the tube, fix two dilated balloons. Okay, so ये कुछ इस type का tube है, Y-shaped. Now, ये जो end है, इस end पे हमें balloons लगाना है. Okay, deflated मतलब वो फुला हुआ नहीं होना चाहिए. Now, we will introduce the tube into the bottles as shown. So, ये हम इस tube को bottle के अंदर डालना है. Okay, we will cap the bottle. And इस end पे we can tie a balloon or a large rubber band. Okay. So now cap the bottle, seal it to make it airtight. To open the base of the bottle, tie a thin rubber or plastic sheet using a large rubber band, or you can also tie a balloon. So this is how the model looks like. This is the plastic bottle. These are the balloons. Okay. And this is the rubber sheet. Now, this experiment is really important. So, the plastic tube over here is representing our windpipe. It is analogous. It is similar to our windpipe. ये जो balloons है, ये represent कर रहे हैं हमारे lungs को. And ये जो rubber sheet है, it is representing our diaphragm. Okay. Now let us see what we are going to do in this experiment, what we are going to learn in this experiment. So to understand the expansion of lungs, we have to pull the rubber sheet from the base downwards and watch the balloons. So हमें क्या करना है? हमें इस sheet को, इस balloon को नीचे की तरफ push करना है. जैसे ही हम इसे push करते हैं, you will see that these balloons are filled with air. Okay. So next, push this rubber or plastic sheet up and again observe the balloons. जब हम इसे ऊपर की तरफ push करते हैं, we see that these balloons are deflated. Okay, इनमें अब air नहीं है. Now they are shrinked. Now they have shrinked. Okay, so what do the balloons in this model represent? As we have already learned, ये balloons represent करते हैं हमारे lungs को. Lungs. जब भी हम breathe in करते हैं, diaphragm जब नीचे की तरफ move होता है, our lungs are filled with air. Okay, and what does this rubber sheet represent? As we have already mentioned, this rubber sheet is going to represent our diaphragm. Now, you should be able to explain the mechanism of breathing. So I hope everybody is now clear with the mechanism of breathing. Now, let us understand, what do we breathe out? So for this, let's carry out activity 6.6. So in this activity, we need a slender matlab thin, clean test tube or a plastic or a glass bottle. We have to make a hole in its lid and we have to fix it on a bottle. Now we will pour some freshly prepared lime water in the test tube. Now insert the plastic straw through the hole in the lid in such a way that it dips in the lime water. And then we will gently blow through the straw a few times. Okay, blow मतलब हमें फूकना है उस straw के अंदर. Okay, so हम एक clean test tube लेंगे. Test tube को हम lime water से fill कर देंगे. We will add a straw onto it. अब हम इस straw में फूकेंगे. We'll blow into the straw for few times. And then we will observe the change in the lime water. Now, before I proceed, let me tell you a very interesting thing. Students often confuse that lime water is actually the water made up of lemon, but it's not true. Okay, lime water is actually calcium hydroxide. Okay, it is a chemical, calcium hydroxide. Okay, it's not lemon water. Okay, now when we when we will blow the wind into the straw for a few times, we will observe that there is a change in the appearance of lime water. So is there a change in the appearance of lime water? The answer is yes. What you will observe, what change you will observe? You will see that the lime water turns milky. Okay, so can you explain this change on the basis of what you have learned in chapter 5? So we have learned that whenever carbon dioxide passes through the lime water, it will turn milky. So you are aware that the air we inhale or exhale, they are mixture of gases. So what do you exhale? So we exhale mixture of gas. Okay. So जब हम inhale करते हैं, it consists of nitrogen, carbon dioxide, oxygen, and all the other gases. जब हम exhale भी करते हैं, it is having the same composition. Okay, nitrogen का उतना ही composition होता है, other gas का भी उतना ही composition होता है. The concentration of carbon dioxide and oxygen changes both in inhalation and exhalation. Do we exhale out only carbon dioxide or mixture of gases along with it? So your answer is we exhale out mixture of gases. You must have also observed that if you exhale on a mirror, a film of moisture appeared on its surface. From where do these droplets come? As mentioned, हमने अभी क्या पढ़ा? हम जो air inhale कर रहे हैं, it is a mixture of gases. Okay, it is consisting of nitrogen, carbon dioxide, oxygen, then water vapor. Okay, जब हम water vapor inhale करते हैं, तो हम water vapor exhale भी करते हैं, right? So whenever we exhale on a mirror, ये water vapor एक layer बना देता है, film बना देता है moisture का on its surface. So from where these droplets are coming from? It is coming from the water vapor, the less quantity, the very small quantity of water vapor that we have inhaled. Okay. And कितना concentration रहता है इस water vapor का हमारे inhaled air में? It is just 0.05%. Okay, इतना हम inhale भी करते हैं और exhale भी करते हैं. Now, Buju is having a very interesting question. Buju wants to know how much air a person can hold in our lungs. So we can hold around 6 liters of air in our lungs. So this is our capacity of the lungs to hold the air. Now, let us understand the percentage of oxygen and carbon dioxide in our inhaled and exhaled air. So जब हम inhale करते हैं, it is consisting of majorly 21% of oxygen and 0.04% of carbon dioxide. Okay. Apart from that, it contains 78% of nitrogen, and there are other gases as well. But जैसे ही हमने inhale किया, ये oxygen हमारे body में utilize हो जाता है to break down the food. As a result, when we are exhaling out, ये जो concentration है oxygen का, वो reduce हो गया. Okay, it is now reduced to 16.4%. Why? Because oxygen is utilized in our body. It is utilized to break down food. Okay. अब ये carbon dioxide का concentration कैसे increase हुआ? Do you all remember? Respiration में क्या होता है? Food breakdown होता है to produce energy. Apart from that, what is produced? Carbon dioxide and water is produced, right? That's why the concentration of carbon dioxide is increased. That is from 0.04%, it has been increased to 4.4%. And that is why there is a change in the concentration of carbon dioxide and oxygen in our inhaled and exhaled air. Now, let us learn about breathing in other animals, okay? So there are animals like elephants, lions, cows, goats, frogs, lizards, snake, birds. They have lungs in their chest cavity, just like the human beings. And as a result, they are able to breathe with the help of their lungs. Now, how do other organisms breathe? Do they also have lungs like those of the human beings? Like there are various other organisms, such as cockroaches, earthworms, who do not possess a pair of lungs. So let us understand how these organisms are able to breathe. Let us start with cockroaches. So cockroaches have small openings on the sides of their body. Cockroaches के body के जो side में small openings होते हैं, and other insects are also having the similar openings. These openings are called as spiracles. So insects are going to have a network of air tubes called trachea. And this trachea is used for gaseous exchange. Okay, so जितने भी insects हैं, उनके sides में openings है, openings को spiracles कहते हैं. And उनके body के अंदर there is a network of air tubes. Let me show you the network of air tubes. So you can see over here, this is a body of a cockroach. And in body ke andar, there's a network of air tube that is called as trachea. And over here, the gaseous exchange will occur. So how does it functions? Let's understand. So oxygen-rich air will enter inside this insect's body through spiracles. And then it will enter into these tubes, tracheal tubes, and diffuse into the body tissue. Okay, oxygen in openings ke through tracheal tubes mein jaate hain, and then it diffuses inside this body tissue. Okay, and the oxygen is provided to the entire body tissue, all the each and every cells of this body. Similarly, respiration occurs. Food is broken down, carbon dioxide is given out. This carbon dioxide from the cell again goes back to the tracheal tubes, and finally it is thrown out through the spiracles, through the openings. So this air tubes or trachea are found only in insects and not in any other groups of animals. Okay, so this is exclusively found in insects. Do remember this, children. Now, let us talk about earthworms. So you all must have learned in the lower grades as well as in chapter 6 of class 6 that earthworms, they can breathe through their skins. So the skin of the earthworm, it feels very moist. Moist matlab, it will not entirely wet, but narm rahega, it is moist. It will be slightly wet, you can say, narm rahega. And it is slimy, okay? You will feel that chipchipapan when you will touch them. So gases can easily passes through their skin. Now, frogs, although they are having a pair of lungs like human beings, they can also breathe through their skin. And again, their skin is moist and slippery. Now, Buju is having a very interesting question. Buju wants to know if cockroaches, snails, fish, earthworms, ants, and mosquitoes also have lungs. So we know that cockroaches, ants, and mosquitoes, all these insects, they are having spiracles, okay, small openings through which they can breathe. On the other hand, if we talk about snails and fishes, they are breathing through their gills. Talking about earthworms, they can breathe through their skin. Okay, so different organisms, although they are not having lungs, they are having different other means by which they can breathe. Now, Buju is having another question for you all. Buju has seen in television programs that whales and dolphins often come up to this water surface. They even release a fountain of water sometimes while moving upwards. Why do they do so? So see, organisms like whales, dolphins, they come up to the surface of the water to take in the air, okay? Take in oxygen, and they give out carbon dioxide at the surface of water. And this exchange of gases will occur through a special hole in the body called as blowhole. So when they are giving out this, so when they breathe the air out of these blowholes, it appears like a fountain of water. Okay, so dolphins, whales, ये water के surface में आते हैं सांस लेने के लिए. वो oxygen लेते हैं, carbon dioxide release करते हैं through a hole called the blowhole. और जब वो सांस बाहर निकालते हैं, it appears, ऐसा लगता है कि there is a fountain of water. Now, when these organisms are inside the water, ये blowhole close होता है with the help of some special muscles. Okay, it is closed underwater. It is not open underwater. It is closed underwater. Now, let us understand how do different organisms are able to breathe underwater. Can we breathe and survive underwater? So, well, to some extent we can breathe, but we cannot survive in the water for a longer period of time. Well, there are some organisms which live in water and they are able to survive as well, right? So how do they breathe underwater? Let's understand this. So we have already learned in class 6 that gills that are present in the fishes, they are helping fishes to use oxygen which is dissolved in water. Okay, water mein oxygen dissolved form mein rehta hai, and the fishes are having this set of gills which is helping them to utilize this oxygen from the water. So gills are actually projections of the skin. Now you may wonder how gills helps in breathing. Well, again, gills are supplied with blood vessels. And this inside this blood vessel, there is an exchange of gases. Oxygen le liya jayega and carbon dioxide will be released. The exchange of carbon dioxide occurs. Now let's talk about plants. Do plants also respire? Have you ever wondered, do plants also respire? Well, your answer is yes. Plants also respire. All the living organisms respire. Okay. So don't forget, plants are also living organisms. So like other living organisms, plants also respire for their survival. And we have already learned this. So they also take in oxygen from the air and give out carbon dioxide. So in the cells, this oxygen is used to break down the glucose into carbon dioxide and water, just like other living organisms. So plants भी oxygen लेता है from the air. ये oxygen utilize होता है to break down the food. And again, this food is going to break down and release energy along with carbon dioxide and water. Now, in plants, each part can independently take in oxygen from the air and give out carbon dioxide. Okay, plant के जितने भी part है, independently oxygen ले सकते हैं और respire कर सकते हैं. You have already learned in chapter 1 that the leaves of the plants, they have tiny pores. Remember, what are they called as? They are called as stomata. And they are specifically used for the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. So here we are having Paheli. Paheli wants to know whether roots which are underground also take in oxygen. If so, how? So let us understand this. Yeah, plants are having roots which are underground, which are present under the ground, but they also take in oxygen. So these roots are actually present in the soil. Okay. Now these soil particles have space between them. Soil particles के बीच में space होता है. और ये जो roots हैं, roots in soil particles के बीच में जो space है, वहां से air लेते हैं, वहां से oxygen लेते हैं air से. Okay. So there is, so these roots are having root hairs. ये root hairs in space, soil particles के बीच में जो space होते हैं. So there is a space between soil particles. So the root hairs will take up the air from the space between the soil particles, and it is by the process of diffusion. Now remember, जो root cells हैं, वो भी living cells हैं, उन्हें भी energy चाहिए. They also have to respire. So they are doing this with the help of the process of diffusion. Okay, so this is how the roots are able to respire. Like all other living cells of the plant, root cells also need oxygen to generate energy. So roots take up the air from the air spaces present between the soil particles. So let's look at this diagram and understand this. So ये root hair है, जैसे कि हमारे plants में roots होते हैं, उनमें से project करते हैं root hairs, very thin and fine root hairs. Okay, so एक root hair यहाँ पे दिखाया गया है इस diagram में, and these are the soil particles. So आप देख सकते हो इन soil particles के बीच में ये सब air spaces present है. So the root hair will take up the oxygen from this air that is present between the soil particles, and it will take up by the process of oxygen. They take up oxygen, they will break down the food, produce energy, and they will give out carbon dioxide. Now let's proceed. Can you guess what would happen if a potted plant is over water? Now, first of all, what is potted plant? जो plant pot के अंदर है. ओके अगर हम पॉटेड प्लांट में बहुत ज्यादा वाटर डाल देते हैं दैट इज कॉल्ड एज ओवर वाटर्ड सो अगर हम पॉटेड प्लांट में बहुत सारा वाटर डाल देते हैं इफ इट इज ओवर वाटर्ड देन जो सॉइल पार्टिकल्स के बीच में जो स्पेसेस प्रेजेंट थे इट विल बी फिल्ड विद वाटर एंड एज अ रिजल्ट द रूट्स विल नॉट गेट सफिशिएंट ऑक्सीजन एंड द रूट may also die okay so what will happen air spaces between the soil particles are filled with water. And since it is filled with water, the plant's roots will not be able to take up oxygen and ultimately roots can die. Okay, so we should make sure that we are not overwatering the plants. So in this chapter, you learn that respiration is a very vital biological process, very important biological process. All living organisms, they need to respire in order to produce energy, which is needed for their survival. Okay, so all the living organism sub respiration perform karte hain. And remember, respiration is just not taking in oxygen and giving out carbon dioxide. Respiration process mein what is happening? Food is broken down, usually in the presence of oxygen, to produce carbon dioxide, water, and most importantly, to produce energy. And this energy help us to do various kind of work. So with this, we have completed the chapter. So in the next video, we will be solving the question answers of this chapter. Till then, everyone, take care. Bye-bye.